At the beginning of the story, in the middle of a deserted desert, a badly injured and helpless young woman is running for her life like a mad person. Covered in blood, she can barely breathe. Right behind her, a terrifying black car is slowly crawling forward. Suddenly, the car door opens and a strange man steps out. He throws a plastic bottle of water toward the helpless girl and then drops a loaded gun onto the sand. Desperate with thirst, the woman quickly drinks the water. Gathering every bit of courage she has left, she picks up the gun and reloads it immediately. With that gun, she wants to shoot the man and end this nightmare forever. But because of her overwhelming fear and trembling hands, her aim misses completely, and the bullet whistles through the air. In the end, the devilish man lets out a disgusting smile and finishes her off with his car. After that, the scene shifts, and we are once again taken to the same desert highway, where another girl is shown driving. Her name is Bobby. She's speeding down the highway while talking to her sister on the phone. From their conversation, it becomes clear that Bobby is on her way to meet her boyfriend. However, the guy has a terrible past. He has never treated Bobby well, and during arguments he has even become physically abusive. On the call, her sister repeatedly warns her, "Don't let him turn out to be a horrible man like our father. I don't want you to spend your whole life suffering the way Mom did." But Bobby refuses to listen to her sister's practical advice. She wants to give this broken relationship one last chance, believing that maybe he has changed. As she continues driving through the empty highway, her fuel starts running low, so she pulls into a gas station on the side of the road. There, she meets the local sheriff. The sheriff, dressed in a police uniform, approaches her as soon as he sees her and offers her a chilled beer. But from the very beginning, something about his behavior feels strange and deeply uncomfortable. Bobby has no interest in chatting with or getting close to this unknown sheriff, so she rejects the offer. She quietly pays for the fuel at the counter, gets back into her car, and drives away without wasting any time. Once the car starts moving, she calls her sister again. Her sister continues speaking against her boyfriend, and Bobby becomes increasingly angry. In frustration, she presses harder on the accelerator and begins driving at a dangerously high speed. Racing down the highway, consumed by anger, Bobby fails to notice that a sheriff's patrol car is already parked silently on the side of the road. And the officer inside has clearly seen her speeding. The moment the sheriff's car started chasing her with its sirens blaring and signaled for her to pull over, Bobby had no choice but to stop on the side of the road, even though her heart sank with fear. She rolled down her window and realized it was the same sheriff who had been trying to force a conversation with her earlier at the gas station. Acting tough and intimidating, the sheriff demanded all of her car documents and driver's license. Bobby handed them over. After pretending to examine the papers for a few moments, he suddenly claimed that she had been issued a massive $1,000 fine. Bobby was stunned. $1,000 was a huge amount of money, and she didn't have that kind of cash with her. Then the sheriff made up a completely false story. He told her to look behind her and said that the headlights on his police car had been smashed because she had thrown something heavy out of her car window while driving. Bobby knew she had done nothing like that. She was completely innocent. But for some reason, this corrupt sheriff was deliberately targeting her. When she tried to defend herself, he refused to listen. In a cold and rude tone, he ordered her to go to the gas station across the road and withdraw cash from the ATM. He added another condition. Until she brought him the full $1,000 in cash, he would keep her phone and all of her documents confiscated. Now Bobby was furious. She demanded to know what kind of law allowed him to illegally take her phone without any reason. The sheriff immediately exploded in anger and shouted at her to do exactly what he said, warning her that things would get much worse if she argued. Left with no choice, Bobby started walking toward the gas station. But when she got there, she received another shocking blow. The owner told her that the station's ATM had been out of service for the past 10 days. Panicked, Bobby explained that a sheriff had stopped her and was demanding a $1,000 fine. The gas station owner then revealed a terrifying truth. He said that almost every week, different young women came there crying, claiming they had been sent to withdraw money to pay a traffic fine. Hearing this, Bobby finally understood what was really happening. This sheriff was doing it on purpose. He enjoyed stopping lonely, unsuspecting women on the road, intimidating them, harassing them, and turning them into his victims. Realizing the sheriff's disgusting and violent intentions, Bobby makes a decision. She refuses to become the next victim of this psychotic cop. She decides to leave without giving him a single dollar, even if it means losing her driver's license, IDs, and phone forever. As Bobby runs away, the sheriff spots her from a distance, watching her with eyes like a hawk. We can see that Bobby's confiscated phone is still ringing nonstop with calls from her friend. Without any hesitation, the sheriff answers the call and calmly says, "Bobby's busy right now, she'll call you later." Then he tosses the phone into the dashboard compartment of his patrol car, and that's when we see something terrifying. The box is filled with dozens of phones and IDs belonging to innocent girls. The sheriff pulls out his service gun and fires at the headlight of Bobby's car. The loud gunshot throws the car off balance, and Bobby is forced to stop. Furious, the sheriff marches toward her car and aggressively asks, "Why did you try to leave without permission? I told you to stay there and wait for me." Shaking with fear, Bobby begs him to understand her situation. She says she urgently needs to get to her boyfriend, and if she doesn't reach him on time, he'll start to suspect something is wrong. The sheriff laughs and tells her that leaving is impossible now. He claims she's received another fine, and her headlights are damaged as well. Then, under the excuse of a security check, he begins searching for Bobby's body against her will. His behavior is creepy, invasive, and absolutely revolting, making Bobby deeply uncomfortable. Smirking, he tells her that her license will remain with him during the investigation, and if she wants it back, she can pay the fine. Bobby quickly gets back into her car and tries to drive away, but at that exact moment, the sheriff shoots her rear tire. The tire explodes, the car loses control, and it crashes into the deep desert sand dunes. Now Bobby finally understands the horrifying truth. This sheriff is playing a deadly game with her in the middle of the desert. To save her life, she jumps out and runs on foot like a woman possessed. After a while, exhausted and struggling to catch her breath, she enters a small diner on the side of the highway. A waitress approaches and tells her that sitting in the diner without ordering anything is strictly not allowed. Nervous and terrified, Bobby quickly orders a cup of coffee. But the moment she looks out the window, her blood runs cold. The same evil sheriff has arrived outside the diner in his police car. Panic takes over. Bobby immediately gets up, rushes into the restroom, and locks herself inside. Desperately, she starts searching for a window, a back door, any possible escape route. But there is no way out. As Bobby looked out through the restroom window, she suddenly realized that the sheriff had towed her locked car into the diner's parking lot. The keys were still hanging in the ignition. Panic hit instantly. She rushed out of the restroom and ran to the public phone booth nearby. Without wasting a second, she dialed 911. Thinking quickly, she made a fake emergency report, asking for police help at a gas station far down the road. Bobby knew that in this isolated backward town, the sheriff was the only officer on duty. If 911 received the call, he would be sent to that distant gas station. The moment she finished the fake call, she quickly called her boyfriend and tried to explain what had happened. "A psycho sheriff is after me. He wants to kill me." But instead of taking her seriously, her pathetic boyfriend accused her of cheating and started insulting her over the phone. Terrified and completely alone, Bobby hung up and called her sister, trying to tell her her real location. She was just about to confess how badly trapped she was when suddenly, a cold and terrifying voice came from behind her. When Bobby turned around, shaking with fear, she saw the sheriff standing there. He calmly handed back her car keys, phone, and driver's license. Bobby was stunned. How could someone's behavior change so suddenly? Everything looked so normal that she even told her sister on the phone, "Maybe it was all in my head. I think everything is fine now." Outside, the sad waitress was sitting on the steps, quietly crying. Bobby approached her and asked for a ride farther down the road. The girl agreed, and the two of them got into the car and started a new journey together. For a few moments, they were simply talking during the drive. Then, out of nowhere, a deafening gunshot ripped through the silence. The bullet passed straight through the driver's head, and she died instantly behind the wheel. Blood exploded across the dashboard and splattered all over Bobby. And the person who killed this innocent girl was none other than that same deranged sheriff. For some unknown reason, He seemed to be hunting helpless women one by one. Bobby was completely shattered. She had just watched someone die in front of her eyes. She was in such deep shock that she could barely breathe. Trembling, she stepped out of the car, trying to calm herself and get some fresh air. But before she could recover, she saw the sheriff climbing into his police cruiser and coming after her again. Realizing she was the next target, Bobby jumped into the car and sped away. At that moment, her sister kept calling repeatedly. Bobby answered, desperate to tell her everything. But the instant she heard the voice on the other end, her blood ran cold. It wasn't her sister. It was the sheriff. The sheriff had cleverly saved his number under the name of Bobby's sister. Already trapped in a terrifying mental breakdown, Bobby suddenly saw a huge speeding truck coming straight toward her car. To avoid a deadly crash, she slammed on the brakes, stopped the car, and ran toward the truck driver. The driver stepped out and, seeing how terrified she was, asked, "Miss, what happened? Why are you so scared?" Crying and shaking, Bobby told him that a killer sheriff was chasing her and wanted to murder her. Realizing the situation was serious, the driver grabbed a rifle from his truck cabin and aimed it at the sheriff approaching from the road. The sheriff got out of his police car and immediately made up a lie. He shouted, "Don't listen to her. She's a dangerous serial killer. She just murdered a young woman." The truck driver became confused, but the moment his attention shifted, the sheriff pulled out his gun and shot him dead. As soon as the driver collapsed, Bobby ran back to her car like a madwoman and sped away into the darkness. After driving for what felt like forever through the silent night, she reached an old abandoned garage that looked straight out of a nightmare. She hid her car and searched for a place to hide. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her. In self-defense, Bobby grabbed a heavy wooden stick lying nearby and attacked the person coming toward her. She thought it was the sheriff. But when the light came on, she realized it wasn't a killer at all. It was an ordinary mechanic who worked at the garage. The mechanic took her inside, treated her wounds, and gave her a cup of hot coffee. Bobby told him everything. How the sheriff had been hunting her and had already killed 2 innocent people. After hearing the whole story, the mechanic told her to stay there because it was safe and said he would call his boss for help. Bobby asked where the restroom was, and he pointed her toward a back room. The moment she entered that room, her blood ran cold. Along with car tools, she saw chainsaws, saw blades, and horrifying instruments designed to cut human bones. As she looked around, she noticed hundreds of IDs, licenses, and photographs of innocent young women hanging on the wall. At that moment, Bobby realized this was not a garage. It was the sheriff's secret murder room. Then the sheriff appeared behind her and calmly said, "The numbers written on those IDs show how far each girl managed to run before she died." Before Bobby could react, the mechanic struck her on the head with an iron rod and knocked her unconscious. The horrifying truth was revealed. The mechanic was the sheriff's own brother, and the 2 psycho brothers had been hunting women together. When Bobby woke up, she was tightly tied to a heavy wooden chair with thick ropes. The sheriff sat in front of her, polishing a knife, and began telling her his story of hatred. He said their mother was immoral, that they suffered terrible abuse as children, and that they eventually murdered her. Then he held up a knife and revealed the sickening truth. "I made this from my mother's skin and bones." The monster pulled a tool from his pocket, grabbed Bobby's tongue, and brutally cut it off with the knife. The unbearable pain and blood loss caused Bobby to pass out again. When she regained consciousness, she noticed the ropes had been loosened. Gathering every ounce of courage, she stood up, grabbed the same knife made from the mother's skin, and decided to take revenge. Bobby escaped into the empty desert under the dead silence of the night, while the sheriff chased her in his police car. Exhausted, she finally collapsed onto the sand. The sheriff threw a gun with a single bullet near her, expecting her to shoot at him and miss. But Bobby fired the bullet into the air and pretended to die. As the sheriff walked closer to inspect her body, Bobby sprang up with lightning speed and stabbed him repeatedly in the neck with his own knife. While he writhed in agony, she snatched the keys to his car, jumped into the driver's seat, and crushed the monster under the wheels again and again until he was dead. Then Bobby returned to the garage, collected the IDs of the murdered girls and a shotgun, and shot the mechanic brother dead as well. She drove away. When her boyfriend called, She threw the phone out of the window, and on the seat beside her was an ice box containing her severed tongue, preserved so that doctors could reattach it once she reached a hospital. And with that, the story comes to an end. So, what did you think of this terrifying story? Let me know in the comments, and if you enjoy horror stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more.